Okay, good morning. We are back. It feels like forever since we had class, but we're going to start today. We have a question out Learning Catalytics. The best way to get to Learning Catalytics is go to learningcatalytics.com, log in with your My Accounting Lab username and password, and it'll get you in there. You can also get to it if you're on a computer by signing into My Accounting Lab and clicking on Access Learning Catalytics. Usually accessing Learning Catalytics directly from your phone is going to be your best bet. If you're using an iPhone, we have found, for whatever reason, Chrome is a generally more stable browser than Safari for this. So just a heads up, if you have an iPhone, usually Chrome runs a little better. So when you get into Learning Catalytics, it will ask you for a session ID. That session ID is unique each class day, each period of class, and our session ID right now is on the screen. It's 20618207. Haley will continue to paste it in the chat window. The reason she keeps pasting it in the window, because you'll see while it was just up there, why she's doing it again. Anyone that joins Blackboard Collaborate doesn't see all the prior chat. You only see the chat from the moment you join forward. So that's why she keeps pasting it in. Haley will be pasting in the session ID for today. Also, you will note that your question says question 2. You didn't miss a question. The question numbers mean nothing to you. We had to put the question numbers on the questions because before I put the question numbers on the questions, it was possible for me to show one question and Haley to administer a different question. So this way we are both on the same page, because I'll display one in PowerPoint and she will do the matching one in Learning Catalytics. So the question number means nothing on your side. It's not the second question. Now this question is out there. We're going to close it fairly soon. For today, and maybe a couple other days, it is participation based, meaning you have to answer the question to get credit. But if you answer it wrong, in this case the first question is how are you feeling today, there's no right or wrong answer. But so you'll get credit for answering any answer today. So it is 100% participation based today. So you want to make sure that you get an answer in for every question today. Well, every day you do. People will always ask me, how many questions are we going to have? And the answer is, I don't know. We start class, typically every day there'll be a question. So when you come into class, first thing you do is sign in to Learning Catalytics. That question will typically relate to the material from the class before. So it's not something new. But you will have a question to answer, and then we have questions sprinkled throughout the class period. So, and there's not a preset number of questions. Also, every class day is weighted exactly the same as every other class day. So if they have more questions, that doesn't mean more credit. And you get a percentage based on how many today it's how many you answer. Other days it could be a formula based on accuracy and participation. But for right now, to keep our life simple, it is 100% participation today. So what's going to happen this afternoon is I'm going to take your Learning Catalytics scores and put them in My Accounting Lab. And after I do that, I will email you and tell you I have posted the Learning Catalytics scores. So then you will need to, in the next few days, go into My Accounting Lab, click on Results, and make sure that you see Learning Catalytics credit. If you don't see it there, then there is a problem, and we need to resolve it. And you don't want to let it go because you want to make sure you're earning credit for class. Now, you are able to attend any mode you want. So your choices right now are to attend live online at 7:45 or at 9:15, to attend live in person at 7:45 or at 9:15. Doesn't matter which time, it's fine. If you're attending live online, you need to sign into Blackboard Collaborate. Your first and last name should show. if you have problems answering a question in Learning Catalytics, I need to know during class, if you're in the class. If you're online and you're having trouble, you need to talk to Haley. Keep in mind that Haley's chat volume is pretty heavy right now, but she will get back to you. I mean, you're quiet right now. I see your fingers off the keyboard, so clearly you're not working. But anyways, we need to know if there's a problem right now. Today, there are 3 extra people in this room here to help you with questions. So if you have any trouble at all today, this is your last chance to get help during class. Otherwise, if you need help in the future, you'll have to go to TechSpot. You're going to have to go email outside of class or go on the chat window. So do today, if you can't get in, if something's not working or you're not sure what's going on, do raise your hand for help, because that's why we've got people here today. So, and again, if you attend online, Haley is your lifeline. Haley is your go-to person if you have any questions, or if something happened, you need to talk to her and let her know. And so regardless, I don't care how you attend, your Learning Catalytics participation is your score for participation each day. Okay, that session ID is unique to this class right now. If you ever attend 2 classes in one day, it does happen. Occasionally somebody will come in late to the first class and then decide to go to the second class to get full credit. If you do that, if you attend 2 sessions in one day, you need to email me that day, because what happens is when I upload grades to my accounting lab, it's going to take, the way it defaults is it takes the lower of the 2 scores. So it doesn't work to your advantage. So if you do attend 2 classes, I ask usually that you only participate in Learning Catalytics once, but if you do twice on the same day, that needs an email to me. So we have this question out. We have a question out in Learning Catalytics right now. You should answer it. What to do Saturday this week, Chapter 1, Part 2 homework. We're going to go over several of the homework problems today, and all the assignments are in my accounting lab. Okay, we need a note taker for this class. I emailed out an announcement yesterday. There are instructions in that announcement. If you're interested, I encourage you to apply. So this question is on Learning Catalytics. Again, participation is, you're getting participation credit today. In the future, we may go to a model where it's 50% participation, 50% accuracy, but I will announce that class day. There is no need to keep asking if we're getting credit. It is all participation until I tell you otherwise. So today is participation. You need to answer the question. We've had this question up for, let's see, what time is it? We've had it up for several minutes now. We're closing it in 10 seconds. Get your answer in. I'm going to close it. Yes, Learning Catalytics is how you get credit for attendance. There's only one question, right? Okay, somebody just wrote that it's still the old question. This is still the first question. Remember that question 2, the 2 doesn't mean anything. I have to have a unique number. So sometimes I'll start class with question 17. It doesn't matter. It's just question 2 today. Okay, so we're closing it. Let me look and see. Did you close it? I'm closing it. Stop. Wait. You are sure. Okay, and the number 1 answer was good and great, tired, sleepy, cold. Yes, I get all those. So great. Okay, so usually we won't start with, usually we'll start with questions that relate to the last content, but since it's the first day, we started with that one. So what we're going to do now is we are going to start with the content for the class. We're talking about financial statements today. Now this is the last half of Chapter 1. We're going to do several homework problems. Just as a reminder, I want to point out the material, what you would have done this weekend when you did the homework. The accounting equation is the basis for a lot of what we do. You need to know the accounting equation. It's assets equal liabilities plus equity. We're going to see it all through the semester. So we will see that accounting equation. And what we're going to do is we are going to start with being able, I'm going to show you a slide that is an exhibit in your textbook. You have two choices. You can grab the exhibit, you can look at the exhibit in your textbook, or you can download the PowerPoint from Blackboard. The PowerPoint from Blackboard will have this, but we're not going to have time to write down the whole slide, or we're not going to get through the homework for today. Okay, so this exhibit, this is Exhibit 1-6. So it's in your textbook. It's also in the PowerPoint slides you can download from Blackboard. But basically, the financial statements each answer a different question. They answer how well did the company perform during the year if we're talking about the income statement. If we're looking at why did the company's retained earnings change during the year, that would be the statement of retained earnings. What is the company's financial position at year end? That's the balance sheet. And then how much cash did the company generate and spend during the year? That's the statement of cash flows. The statement of cash flows is going to be much later in the semester. So now we talk about it briefly, but we're not going to do the statement of cash flows this semester, this week or next week. But we are going to do the income statement, the statement of retained earnings, and the balance sheet. And this is just a nice summary exhibit. I want to just point you to it so you can grab it later. And we're going to now talk about each one of these. And in the answer column, the formulas, you're going to see them. We're going to go over them in just a minute here. But this is a nice summary. So what we're going to do is we're going to first talk about how all the statements are related, and then we will actually do an income statement, a statement of retained earnings, and a balance sheet. Okay, so the first statement we prepare is the income statement. And the income statement says how well did the company perform during the year. We come up with a net income or net loss, and that flows through to the statement of retained earnings. The statements need to be prepared in this order because the net income shows up on the statement of retained earnings. Once we have the statement of retained earnings, our ending number there, the ending retained earnings, ends up going on the balance sheet. When we're done with the balance sheet, the ending cash balance goes on the statement of cash flows. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do an income statement, a statement of retained earnings, and a balance sheet. Because later on we'll do a problem that incorporates all of them for one company. What we're doing today and what we're doing in the homework is that each of these problems is standalone so that it's more manageable. So what we're going to see, we're going to start with the income statement. So the income statement is the revenues and expenses of the year. We have net income or net loss. When we see parentheses around something, that means it's negative or a net loss. So if you see parentheses, it's negative. Again, applies for the PowerPoint slides. If you have the PowerPoint slides, it gives the information that I have here, and it gives additional information as well that I don't have on here. So you may want to go back and grab those, have those available for you. Okay, so the income statement, how well did we perform during the year? And we have this revenues and expenses of the year. You may want to note on the margin that this also includes the gains and losses. So gains are like revenues, losses are like expenses. That's all the further we'll go into gains and losses at this point, but just know they exist. So the income statement is going to have revenues, gains, expenses, and losses. Okay, so first homework problem. So we're going to do short exercise 1-10. Now, 1-10 is in your textbook. I can't replicate it in the PowerPoint slides because of copyright issues, but the class is recorded, so if you need to come back to this, this is the exercise in the book. So we have O'Malley Services began with total assets of $216 million and ended the year with assets of $358 million. During the year, they earned revenues of $398 and has expenses of $167 million, and O'Malley paid dividends of $25 million. It wants us to prepare the company's income statement. So this is our first real computational homework problem. So we're going to go kind of slow and talk about a lot of things. First of all, this problem, like many, many other problems, has extra information in it that you do not need. So does real life. A lot of real life is figuring out what information is relevant and what's not relevant. So when I look at this problem, there are things in here that I don't need. And part of the challenge is figuring out what I need and what I don't need, just like real life. So don't feel like you have to use every number that's given to you. Okay, so this is an income statement. Now as investors or as users of financial statements, I know that there's four main statements. There's the income statement, how well did we perform. We have the statement of retained earnings, we have the balance sheet, and then we have statement of cash flows. So investors or users of financial statements are used to certain conventions because we want somebody to be able to pick up an income statement from anyone and be able to at least make headway of it. And there's certain standard accounting conventions. So that every statement we pick up, every income statement is going to start with the same three lines. And actually all our statements, those four statements, every statement will start with the name of the company. The very first thing, if you pick up any company statement, the very first thing at the top of the line is what's the entity. So in this exercise, okay, so down below what I've done is I've done the headings. So the headings are important. You need to do them for the homework. They have to be in this order. The first line of any statement, the heading on any statement, any of those four statements we do, is the name of the company. Who are we doing this for? Okay, so as a user of financial statement, I pick it up, I see the name of the company, we're good. The second line is the name of the statement. Now, we have the income statement here. A lot of companies call it a statement of operations. You can and that's the same as income statement. But you can also see on any of these statements, you'll see the word consolidated. You'll see consolidated statement of operations or consolidated balance sheet or something like that. And what that's saying is this company is adding all its subsidiaries together. It's way beyond the scope of what we're doing now, but that consolidated means it's adding all its subsidiaries together. So like Amazon issues consolidated statements, that means it's including Zappos in those statements. It's including all the subsidiaries it owns in those statements. So that's what consolidated means. So the first line is the name of the company. The second line is the name of the statement. The third line is a date line. And this is very precise. This is an income statement. If I were to do a personal income statement for the year, you think about it. I'm doing a personal income statement for the year. If I were to put December 31st and just have my income, you would question, you would say, well, is that for a month? Is it for the year? Is it for a quarter? So when we have an income statement, we always specify the period of time because it makes a huge difference. Is this income for a year or a quarter? You always specify on the income statement the period of time that it's for. So those are the first three lines of any statement, the name of the company, the name of the statement, and then the date line. And that will apply to the statement of retained earnings and the balance sheet and the statement of cash flows as well. So next up, we're going to have, this is an income statement, and the most basic fundamental concept is we're going to go revenues minus expenses equals net income. That is the most basic format for an income statement we could have. These are going to get a little more detailed, a little more complicated as we go in the semester, but for right now we have revenues minus expenses equals net income. Notice it doesn't say minus expenses, I'm just saying that that's how it would be, and then net income. Okay, now this problem says It refers to all the numbers. All the numbers are 3 digits with the word million after it. So they have already stripped 6 zeros out to make it easier to read. So what I'm going to do is my column over here, I'm going to put the word millions above it. And that's to tell the users that 6 zeros have been stripped out of this. For your homework, enter the numbers just like they're given to you in the problem. Don't feel like you want to add 6 zeros because then you're going to have enormous numbers that you're talking about, and it's not the same. So our revenues are given to us as $398 million. Okay, so I put the $398 million there, and then the millions column says that that's in millions. And notice I have a dollar sign in front of it. You do not need to use dollar signs in My Accounting Lab. You can if you want. It's not going to grade you one way or the other. But what I want to show you now is standard convention. Standard convention says that when we have the first number in a column of numbers, it gets a dollar sign. We also put a dollar sign for any subtotals or totals. But we don't put, so when you open up a financial statement, you don't see dollar signs all the way down. The rule is the first number in a column and then every subtotal and total after that. Okay, so revenues. Okay, minus expenses. Now, we don't enter expenses as negative. Knowledgeable users know that income is revenues minus expenses, so we don't put negative. It is possible to have negative expenses, so we don't put minus signs around it because it would convey the wrong message. And then we get net income. Now, a couple things. When we have a single underline, that says we are doing a subtotal of the numbers above it. It could be 3 numbers, it could be 4 numbers. Typically it goes back to the last subtotal. And that says we're either adding or subtracting the numbers above it. So in our case, we have a single underline. So we have revenues of $398 minus expenses of $167 gives us net income of $231. Can you move the participants window? Thank you. Okay. Okay. So net income. Now notice too that net income now has a double underline under it. This isn't a big deal. When you have a single underline and a double underline, that says this is a total. Okay? There's nothing more to do. This you will see in financial statements from companies. This means it's complete, it's done. So in My Accounting Lab, when you're entering numbers and you see a single underline on the top of a cell and a double underline on the bottom of the cell, that's where your total goes. Your total cannot go anywhere else. That's what it's asking for. And we put a dollar sign, and so we have revenues minus expenses gives us our net income. And again, in My Accounting Lab, you don't have to enter dollar signs. If you want to, you can. It will not impact your grade at all. I just saw the word study plan go by, so I want to deviate for a minute and talk about study plan for a minute. Okay. Okay. I saw study plan in the chat room, so I wanted to say it because I've gotten a couple of questions about it. You do not need to be working in study plan right now. Your major emphasis right now should be reading the chapter and practicing the homework, being able to do the homework well. When it comes time for an exam, you can use study plan to prepare for the exam if you wish. I will talk more about that closer to the exam time. You will also have a practice exam that you'll be able to use to prepare for the exam. So if you want to work at study plan, you can. You do not need to by any means at this point, and there is no credit at any point for study plan. So it doesn't impact your grade. It is a tool there for you to practice with. So if you want to practice, you can use study plan. It is not a requirement. Okay, so now in this problem, let's say you looked at it and you said, gee, I don't know if I should enter those 6 zeros or not. Well, I can look at it and say, no, you shouldn't because it's given to you as 398. You don't see those 6 zeros. You wouldn't put them in. But if you had doubt about that, if you ever have doubt about, there's rounding instructions in every problem, but if you don't see them immediately, click on the Help Me Solve This. It will bring up an alternate problem, different numbers, but it will show you a model answer. So that's really helpful. Okay, so we have done the income statement. The income statement answers this question about how well did the company perform. It could be a net loss at the bottom. A net loss results when our expenses are bigger than our revenue. And that makes sense, right? Because if you pay out more, if you spend more than what you make, then that's going to be a net loss. And if it were a net loss, it would have parentheses around the last number, that total. Okay, now we're going to go on. We're going to have a Learning Catalytics question. So Haley is pushing out a Learning Catalytics question. Okay, now with this Learning Catalytics question, this is actually one that you have to select more than one answer. So select all the answers that are right. I believe at the bottom, when you've selected all your answers, at the bottom there'll be a Done button in the right-hand corner, and you click Done. When you do that, wait a few seconds. You will see it accept your answer, and then it will disappear. You want to make sure that you've submitted your answers. Okay? Again, learningcatalytics.com, you'll log in, yes. Student. The session ID, let me read it to you so you're in the wrong, you're in the one where you can't see it. 2061 8207. I'm sorry. Do you have 8 digits there? See if it works. Did it work? Okay, great. Oh, you're not doing it. Why am I looking at yours? Did it work? You answered? Answered? Okay. Barry will come help you. You raise your hand. Okay. Anybody else need help? Okay. Anyone else need help? Okay. Yeah, Catherine, Catherine, you can just go back in. You might want to sign out of the session and go back, sign back in. There haven't been 10 questions. I'm gonna quit reading. Okay. You're good? Okay. Everyone here in my little circle, my splash zone? Ask Catherine if she continues to have trouble, what browser she's using, etc. Get as much information as you can. Okay. Okay, so everyone that's physically in front of me, anyone need help? I see Justina helping one person, so she could help. Pardon me? Anybody need help? We have helpers. It's kind of like talk now. There. Boom. That's an easy answer for that one. You see what happened on that? It's not the class access code. Chrome is going to be more stable even if she's using an iPhone. Okay. Okay. Okay, we're good? What are we in terms of number? Oh, that's close. That's close. Hey, Min, we're gonna close, but she can give me your name at the end for this one. Okay. Okay, I'm going to answer that one. You have to answer every single question to get credit. Today's participation only, so you could, in theory, answer every single question wrong and still earn full credit. But you have to answer every question. If you answer 9 out of 10 questions correct, you'll get a score of 90% for the day when we're doing participation. Later in the semester, it will go to accuracy based, and then we'll talk about that then, but not to worry about that right now. Right now, answer a question. Any answer will work. We're closing this one. You close it. Okay, the answer on this one, revenues, expenses, gains, and expenses. Revenues, expenses, gains, or losses. At any time, if you want to review any of the questions we did in Learning Catalytics, you can sign into Learning Catalytics and you can review past sessions. You can do that sometime after noon or so on the day we have the class. It's not ready right after class, but it's ready soon thereafter. You can review any of the questions we had and your answers. If you ever see you don't get full credit, you can go there first and see what questions you didn't answer. It is key that when you answer a question, you make sure you watch it, and a few seconds later, it should accept your answer and you should be good to go. If you're online, you need to speak up right away and tell Haley if there's an issue. If you're physically in the classroom, today your hand should be going up because we have people here to help you. After today, your hand should go up and we'll make a note of your name, but you've got to speak up. You can't come back to me a day later and say, oh, I didn't get credit for the first 2 questions. I will be putting your scores for Learning Catalytics up later today, this afternoon. Once I post those, they'll be in my accounting lab under results. Once I post those, I will send out an announcement saying that those are there, and then you can go and make sure your score transferred. If it didn't transfer, we're going to have to troubleshoot and figure out why. But you want to do that now before you lose credit for class. So we need to hear from you. And again, it doesn't matter what class you attend. It's all the same to me, but you do have to answer all the questions, and it is participation based. Okay, so we're going to move on. Okay, one more. This question is way easier than it looks. Assume that beginning retained earnings is $100. Revenues, did you push this question out? Revenues for the year total $75 while expenses total $50. The company paid out dividends during the year totaling $10. What is net income? Okay, so you have to do a computation here. Just think about what we said about what net income was. You're not using an access code, are you? Okay, so you're going to be entering a number. You don't want to enter a dollar sign or anything, just your number. Beginning retained earnings $100. Revenues for the year total $75 while expenses total $50. Company paid out dividends during the year totaling $10. What's net income? Okay, we're going to be closing this question in about 10 seconds, so make sure you have an answer. If you don't have an answer yet, enter 1 and hit enter. Just submit an answer so you get credit. Again, today is, and we're going to go over the answer in just a minute. So Are you, is it close? Okay. So the answer is going to be $25. And how I got that, revenue 75, expenses 50. So my answer is $25. That's my net income. So again, that's a case where there's a lot of extra information. We have to think about what's net income. Net income is revenues minus expenses. Dividends never impact net income. Okay. Next up, statement of retained earnings. Now again, these statements that we're doing are 3 separate statements. They are not one gigantic problem. I don't like huge problems because you make a mistake up here and it impacts you the rest of the way. So we have 3 completely standalone problems. Statement of retained earnings. I just abbreviated it RE for my own purposes. In My Accounting Lab, you have drop-down boxes so you don't have to type it in. It opens with beginning retained earnings. Beginning retained earnings for any given year is the same as ending retained earnings for last year. So what you end the year with is exactly equal to what you begin the year with. If you think about the money that's in your bank statement, on the last day of the year you have so much money in there. On the next day at 12:01 you still have that same amount in there. So the end of the year is equal, last year's year end is equal to this year's beginning of year. We add net income or subtract net loss. We subtract dividends declared. Now there's a difference between dividends declared and dividends paid. We aren't going to worry about that distinction until we get to a later chapter. So right now, just go with dividends. We don't need to make that distinction. And then we'll have the ending retained earnings balance at the end of the year. Again, if you need the slides, they are on Blackboard. And there's usually more information on each slide than what I have here. So somewhat of what I'm saying is on those slides that are on Blackboard. Okay, so we're going to do a statement of retained earnings now, and you'll see that format that we had on there. So we have short exercise 1-11, and 1-11, we have Canada Corp began 2004 with retained earnings of $286. So that's their beginning retained earnings. It's also their ending retained earnings for last year. Revenues during the year were $482 million. Expenses totaled $337 million, and they declared dividends of $59 million. So they want us to come up with the ending balance of retained earnings, and we are supposed to prepare their statement of retained earnings. So let's just get started. So all the numbers are going to come from this homework problem. So I'm moving the problem to the bottom just so I can have the statement on the top. But starting with the name of the statement, the statement heading, always start with the name of the company. Always. Every statement. All these 4 statements we do start with the name of the company. This will hold true throughout the whole semester. It holds true for companies in real life. The first line of a statement is always the company's name, followed by the name of the statement next. And then we have a date line. And the statement of retained earnings is for a period of time. So this will be for the year ended, or for the month ended, or the quarter ended, as the case may be. Okay, so the statement of retained earnings, the first number we put down is the retained earnings from end of last year, which is the same as this year's beginning retained earnings. Okay. I'm simply putting a statement format, then we'll fill numbers in. So I'm going to take retained earnings. I typically don't have the word add, but I put it here so we can remember which way to do it. Less dividends declared, so I put in less in there and it typically wouldn't be there. And then it gives us our ending retained earnings. So that's our basic format for every statement of retained earnings. We start with our beginning retained earnings, which is the same as last year's ending. Add our net income, subtract dividends declared gives us ending retained earnings. Okay, so now this is in millions, so we're going to have our millions column. And then our beginning retained earnings, it tells us we began the year with 286. That is the same as last year's ending. So we have 286 million to begin with. Now, net income, they don't give us net income. We have to calculate it. Net income is going to be revenues minus expenses. In our case here, our revenues during the year were 482 million and expenses were 337 million. So both those numbers were given to us in the problem. So we have net income of 145. So you're going to have to compute this. Your homework problem is going to look just like this. So you'll have to do that calculation on the side. And then we will subtract dividends declared. Okay, dividends declared were 59. I'll put brackets around it because I'm subtracting. If you ever have a question about whether something needs parentheses around it or not when you're doing the homework, what it will accept, just click on the Help Me Solve This. This will bring up a model answer if you skip through it, and that'll be a good way if you need help when you start that. Okay, and then retained earnings, ending retained earnings is 372. How I got that number is I took my beginning retained earnings of 286, added my net income of 145, subtracted dividends declared of 59, and I got 372. Notice that 372 is in the cell that has a single underline above it and a double underline below it. That tells us this is the total for the statement and the statement's done. Okay, so that format that you just saw there, very basic format for statement of retained earnings. That's what you're going to see. Now we have a question pushing out on Learning Catalytics. Okay, and again, it should look familiar, but it's a different question at the end. Assume that beginning retained earnings is $100. Revenues for the year total 75, while expenses total 50. The company paid out dividends during the year totaling $10. What's ending retained earnings? No, the parentheses are not for when you subtract that number if the number is a negative number. Again, usually the parentheses are reserved for net losses, but you're not going to put parentheses around everything you subtract. You don't put parentheses around expenses. That one may be a little odd that dividends I think normally have parentheses around them. So that's a convention. But you don't put parentheses around everything you subtract. We're going through the basic models for the statements here. What do we have here? Okay. Okay, anyone need help answering the question? Keep trying to drum up business for you. See, but you're enjoying accounting class, right? Yoo-hoo! When are you taking it? Take it this fall. You know how class works now. Okay. So we're going to be closing this question in about 10 seconds or so. Get an answer in. If you're not done or you don't have an idea, hit 1 and hit done. Okay, because you want to make sure you get an answer in. Again, normally you make sure that you try the problem, but if you just don't know, you want to make sure you get participation credit today. So we are going to close this question. So what we're going to see here is ending retained earnings. That's at beginning. The statement starts beginning retained earnings plus net income minus dividends. So when we fill in the numbers we're given beginning retained earnings, net income, that we just computed that before, but net income is our revenue minus our expenses, so we would have used 25 and subtract dividends of 10. So our answer here would be 115. In learning catalytics, you want to make sure you don't use dollar signs. If we have a problem like this, just put the plain number in it. Learning catalytics is not as forgiving as my accounting lab. It won't, let me preface that with today it wouldn't matter. If you put a dollar sign on this and you didn't get it right, you're like, why? I got it, I entered dollar sign 115. Well, it's because learning catalytics doesn't like dollar signs. But you're getting full credit today anyway, so it wouldn't matter. Okay, next, balance sheet. This is the biggie. This is the one that takes more time than the other ones. So the balance sheet. This is our accounting equation in a statement format. The balance sheet is your accounting equation. It lists our assets, it lists our liabilities, and it lists our equity. Plain and simple. Balance sheet. Balance sheet's a little bit different than any other statement. It's for a moment in time. It's our balance in cash at the end of the year. It's our balance in accounts payable. It's our balance in common stock. So the balance sheet is for one date and time. So this is different than any of the other statements that we do, than the other three. If you're in Section 6, yes, you can attend class in person. There's enough seats. Okay, so we are going to do short exercise 1-12. And this exercise is going to take a fair amount of time because you have to do a calculation before you can get to do the statement. So this statement, what it tells us is we have it tells us this company has Washington Products has cash of $21,000, receivables of $17,600, and inventory of $79,000. The company's equipment totals $185,000. Those are all assets they're giving us. So we have all those assets. Then it tells us Washington owes accounts payable of $25,000. Okay, that's a liability. And long-term notes payable of $169,000. So that's another liability. So they're giving us liabilities. It's nice. They're giving us all to us in order. Common stock is $30,500. Okay, prepare the balance sheet. Use the accounting equation to compute retained earnings. So they're telling us they have not given us every number. We need to calculate retained earnings. The accounting equation says that our assets have to equal our liabilities plus our equity. When I look at my own, if I say, okay, as every asset has to come from financing or stock or equity of some say, retained earnings. So you had to get it from equity or financing, debt or equity. And so the accounting equation is, here's your assets, where did they come from? And so our assets always have to equal our total liabilities plus total equity. So the first thing we need to do, because of that last sentence where it says the accounting equation, use the accounting equation to compute retained earnings. Okay, we are not told what total equity is, okay, with just one component. We are told what common stock is. Remember that equity is common stock plus retained earnings, okay? So these are just things we know from manipulating the accounting equation over the weekend, the videos and things like that, reading the book. So equity is common stock plus retained earnings. Okay, so I need to solve for equity to start with because my end goal here is to get retained earnings. I need to solve for retained earnings. I can solve for retained earnings if I have common stock. if I have common stock and equity, but I don't know equity. So let's go with the accounting equation. Assets equal liabilities plus equity. So when you do the homework, you will do exactly what I'm telling you here. You will go through these same steps and it will work the same way, just different numbers. Okay, so assets equal liabilities plus equity. So I'm going to go on. So first question, what are total assets? Well, total assets, I need to calculate that. I go through and I'm going to add cash of $21,000, receivables of $17,600, inventory of $79,000, and equipment of $185,000. So I add those four together and I get $302,600. That's my total assets. Okay, so I have total assets. My next question is going to be, what's my total liabilities? Because remember, my accounting equation is assets equal liabilities plus equity. I'm trying to solve for equity, so I need assets and I need liabilities. So total liabilities are my accounts payable of $25,000 and long-term notes payable $169,000. So I have $194,000 as my liabilities. Okay, so back to the accounting equation. I've got assets of $302,600 equal to liabilities of $194,000 plus equity. And if I rearrange that, then I get equity of $108,600. Okay. So I'm getting close to the number I need. Remember, I need retained earnings. I know what common stock is, and now I know what total equity is. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take equity of $108,600, subtract common stock, and everything else has to be retained earnings. So what we're going to see here is a lot of numbers. My equity is my common stock plus my retained earnings. My equity, filling in numbers now, is $108,600 equals common stock of $30,500 plus retained earnings. Subtract that, and I get retained earnings of $78,100. So that $78,100, you need to make a note of that, circle it. That was the point of what we did. Everything we just did was to come down to that $78,100. And we're going to use that in a little bit. Right now we're going to start on the balance sheet then. So we're going to start at the beginning of the balance sheet. That is retained earnings, so it's going to be at the end of the balance sheet. We go assets equal liabilities plus equity. But you need to know that, because I didn't want to stop the statement in the middle to compute that. So we're starting our statement. We know what all our numbers on the statement are. Okay, so let's go. Now notice that I don't have the problem on the screen anymore. Every number I get in the problem is coming directly from the problem except the $78,100, which we just calculated. Okay, balance sheet. First line of the balance sheet has to be the name of the company. Okay, just like all the other statements that we do. Next line is the name of the statement. And the third line is the date line. The balance sheet is the only statement that is a single date. It does make a difference. It will be different on your homework. You will not get credit if you pick the wrong date. It's a big deal. If you look at an income statement, you need to know, is that income for a year, or is that income for a month, or for a quarter? That makes a huge difference. A balance sheet, on the other hand, is telling you how much the company has, how much cash, how much stock, how much liabilities. So those are all balances as of a particular day. So the balance sheet is as of a day and time. Now, the balance sheet will have assets on the left and the liabilities and equity on the right. The two sides need to balance at the end or something's wrong. There's an error. We're going to start our balance sheet. We put the accounts down on the balance sheet in order of decreasing liquidity, which means how close an asset is to cash. The very first account on a balance sheet, we call this first group of accounts on a balance sheet current assets. Current assets are things that are going to turn into cash within a year. It's within an operating cycle or a year, but we'll just go with year because that's most of our problems in here. So within a year, this balance sheet item will be turned into cash. The very first item on a balance sheet is going to be cash, always. Because how much closer to cash can you get than cash? So cash is always the first thing. Order does make a difference. So cash is first. Okay, so we list our cash. Next up, we take receivables. Receivables are things that our customers owe us. Generally, they have to pay us within 30 days. So that's turning into cash pretty soon. And then inventory. Inventory we're selling, but it might take a little bit longer, so it typically goes after receivables. So that's the order that those go in. And then I draw a single underline, and I'm going to get a total for total current assets of $117,600. So I've just added my current assets. Now my next asset is a long-term asset. It's equipment. Equipment is not turning into cash, and it's not being used up in the next year. Equipment is something I buy to use in the business for many years. It could be a car. It could be an extruder. It could be a drill press. But it's something I'm going to use in the business for multiple years. So it's considered to be a long-term asset, so it's not a current asset. Okay, so then we have our total current assets of $117,600 at equipment. Notice that I have a single underline under equipment. That says I'm doing a subtotal, and that subtotal is going to be the subtotal of the numbers up to the last single underline as a rule of thumb. Now we might add or we might subtract depending on what it is, but in this case we're going to add total current assets, add equipment, and I'm going to get total assets of $302,600. Okay, so my total assets, I'm going to put a double underline under it, and that will tell me that I'm done with my total assets. So right now, before I go any further, I know that my total liabilities and total equity combined have to be $302,600. In terms of the heading, you might put a heading for long-term assets or you might not. That's not, since you only have one, you may or may not use a long-term asset heading. It's not carved in stone which way to go. If you have a question on the homework, you can certainly click to help me solve this and get a model problem, but it's not required to have a heading for the long-term assets, especially since we have one. Okay, now this is really important. This will save a few of you some frustration on the homework, and this applies to more than this problem. It applies in the several weeks to come. My accounting lab for this problem gives you like a blank slate, and you have rows, and you have drop-down menus where you pick which account. So you're not typing it in, so you don't have to worry about spelling or capitalization or anything like that. So you do this. So you're picking all the assets. You have to put them in the right order. You have to put the subtotals where they're needed. So far, so good. Now when you get down to the bottom and you're done picking all the assets you want to pick, there will be, will be a few extra lines at the bottom. Don't put your total in those extra lines. You need to look for the cell that has the single underline and the double underline, because that says here's the total, here's where the total goes. You need to demonstrate that you know that that's where the total goes. And my accounting lab is not going to tell you exactly how many lines you have. So you need to, when you put the total assets in my accounting lab, you need to look for that single underline and double underline cell, and that's the line that your total assets go on. Okay, so it's going to apply later on down the road too, but when you have a total like that, look to see if you have a cell that already has a single underline, double underline in it, and that's where you need to put it. So I think on this one, if I recall right, you have to skip a few lines and this will be down towards the bottom. Okay, so it's just a matter of finding that one. Okay, so that's our assets. So we are done with that column. Now we're going to move to the right. The right is our liabilities plus our equity. Now liabilities go on the right-hand side. We'll start with those. And those two have an order. They go current liabilities, long-term liabilities. The things that are most currently due to the things that are due later. So we only have one current liability. We have accounts payable given to us as $25,000. We don't have a total because we know that's $25,000. Long-term liabilities, long-term notes payable, $169,000. Single underline says I'm going to do a subtotal for liabilities here. So my total liabilities are $194,000. I don't put a double underline under that because I'm not done with this side of the balance sheet. Remember, we have assets, what we own, and then on the other side, liabilities and equity. Where did we get the money for the assets? Did it come from financing debt? Did it come from equity? Okay, next section, stockholders' equity. Stockholders' equity. Now, we're going to put common stock that's given to us is $30,500. Next up, retained earnings. That $78,100, that number that we calculated, that's where it goes. So then we do our total, we do a single underline, and we add common stock and retained earnings together, and we get $108,600. Okay, so we've got total liabilities and we have total stockholders' equity. So what I have to do then is I have to do a total line, which is my total liabilities of $194,000 plus my total stockholders' equity of $108,600, and so we get the total. The reason total liabilities is not double underlined is because we are not done with this side of the statement. This side of the statement is total liabilities plus total equity together. So the statement is the total of the two. So our total liabilities of $194,000 plus our total stockholders' equity of $108,600 gives us $302,600, which is our total liabilities and equity, which balances to our total assets. So we are said to be in balance. We can draw a double underline under that total because we are done with that side of the equation, that side of the balance sheet as well. The balance sheet, the total assets have to equal the total liabilities plus equity. Okay? Because we're saying here's what we own and where did it come from? You know, what's our debt, what's our equity? Okay, questions about this? Okay, so observations about the balance sheet, things you need to know. First of all, it's the only statement that is one date. So it will be as of a date. These are balances. If I look at this balance sheet, this is cash as of that day. This is receivables. This is how much my customers owe me as of December 31st, 2014. This is how much inventory I have. So these are balances. They aren't, here's all the cash I had available to me the whole year. This is what I have as of the end of the year. So this is the only statement of the four statements that is as one date and time. This statement is organized by accounts in terms of liquidity. If we look at assets, the order does matter. Cash is always first. We have current assets. Receivables are typically second. Inventory is typically third. This is the order you should use. And then we have equipment, which is a long-term asset. We could have other long-term assets like long-term investments. We could have buildings. We could have land. And then, so that's the assets. Remember on your homework that I think actually this total asset line, you have to skip a few lines. You're looking for that single underline and double underline because you're done with that side of the statement. Over on the right-hand side, we start with current liabilities, accounts payable, typically the very first liability you see. We have those current ones. Current means within 1 year. If we're talking about liabilities, it's things that are due within 1 year. Long-term means we don't have to, it's not being paid back this year. Total liabilities we have, and then we have total stockholders' equity. We're actually done with that side when we add those two together and get our total, and that's where the single underline, double underline cell goes to the total on that side. So we've covered 3 financial statements. We've started with the income statement. The income statement comes with net income. Net income flows to the statement of retained earnings. The statement of retained earnings ends with ending retained earnings and flows through to the balance sheet. This retained earnings here would have come from the statement of retained earnings. And then the balance sheet sends cash balance to the statement of cash flows. We are not doing the statement of cash flows in this chapter. We'll wait till much later in the semester to do the statement of cash flows. Now this week too, we have 8 minutes left? Sure. Okay. So let's not do that question. I don't want to do that question. Okay, we're not doing the statement of cash flows, but what I want to do is I want to do a homework problem. I can find it. Let's see what this is. Oops, not that one. One of those ones I don't have labeled. Okay, this should be. Okay, let's do exercise 1-17A. This is on your homework. Okay, City Car Wash has current assets of $180 million, property, plant, and equipment of $300 million, and other assets totaling $110 million. Current liabilities are $105 million and long-term total $280 million. Okay, so we're given a lot of numbers there, and we have a series of requirements. The first requirement is to use these data to write their accounting equation. So I'm moving the problem to the bottom so I have room to work. The accounting equation is also always assets equal liabilities plus equity. Notice it can be stockholders' equity, it can be owner's equity, or it could just be plain old equity. So assets. Assets down in the bottom of the problem, we have current assets of $180 million. We have property, plant, and equipment of $300 million, and other assets totaling $110 million. Okay, gives a total assets of $590 million. So all I've done is gone through the problem, identified the assets. Next up, liabilities are $105. And long-term liabilities are $280. So my total liabilities are $385. Okay, so then my total stockholders' equity, I'm going to take the assets minus the liabilities. So my 590 minus my 385 gives me 205. So that's all we have to do to calculate. So when they want the accounting equation, it becomes assets of 590 equal liabilities of 385 plus stockholders' equity of 205. So that's what they're asking for in requirement 1. Okay, so we have 590 equal to 385 plus 205. We're going to work with that for the other 3 questions. The other 3 questions go very, very rapidly. Okay, so now the next 3 questions. How much in resources do they have to work with? How much do they owe creditors? And how much do the shareholders actually own of the assets? So the first one, the first question. So this first question, how much in resources? This is question 2. How much in total resources to work with? It's the assets. What they're asking in that question is how much in total resources they have? That's the total assets. How much in total liabilities? So what amounts do they owe to creditors? That's our total liabilities. And then the third question that's given to us there or the fourth question. So how much in resources? The answer for number 2 is the total assets. The answer for number 3, how much does it owe creditors? That's total liabilities. And then the fourth one, how much of the company's assets do the city car wash stockholders actually own? That's our equity. So we go back to the accounting equation. And that last one, the 205, the stockholders' equity, is how much is actually owned by company shareholders. Okay, now we are pushing out a question. Isn't Paloma doing 3? Okay. We're pushing out a question to Learning Catalytics right now. The question on Learning Catalytics, I don't want to leave this slide in case you want to copy this down. The question on Learning Catalytics is something about what's due this week. So I'll take this time to remind you about what's due. This week, the Chapter 1 Part 2 homework is due. That's what you have to do. It's in my accounting lab. I'll also be sending out an announcement with if I have any other homework problems that I've not gotten through in class. I can't remember off the top of my head or not. So I'll go back to my office, see if any of those. So I'll send out the link if we do have any more for the homework. Otherwise, Chapter 1, Part 2 homework. Then next week is our first full week, and we will do Chapter 2 next week. So and if you're in Learning Catalytics and you've submitted the answer and you know you've submitted your answer, you're free to log out. If you're online, once you've done Learning Catalytics and everything's good, you should leave the room. We do ask that when you're done with class, you do exit the room because otherwise we have to remove you. So have a nice weekend. Take any questions if I need them.